Okay, hello everyone. It's 12:01, so we're going to go on and get started. Welcome to today's speaker event, Leadership Strategies to Cultivate a Diverse and Inclusive Environment. My name is Taylor Fife, and I'm joined by Mega Pie. We'll be your moderators for today's event, and we also serve as the Diversity and Inclusion Co-Chairs and Social Media Co-Chairs on PRSA Pittsburgh's board. So we're so thrilled and grateful to these panelists for their time, efforts, and impacts in the field as it relates to diversity and inclusion, both professionally and in our day-to-day lives. So we ask that all the participants, they please mute their mics during the event. We will have about 10 to 15 minutes at the end of the event to answer questions. So go ahead and drop your questions in the comments and we'll be sure to get to them as time allows. Okay, now we're going to introduce our speakers.
Hey everyone, I'm Mega. Thank you, Taylor, for that great introduction. So first, we'd like to welcome Paloma Denardis. Paloma currently serves as the head of diversity and inclusion at Dick's Sporting Goods, where she strives to create an environment of belonging and equity for 40,000 teammates across the U.S. She is a graduate of the University of Rhode Island and has held a variety of roles across recruitment and employment marketing prior to finding her passion in working around inclusion. She resides in the city of Pittsburgh and is committed to helping this great city live up to its name of being the most livable city for all. Oh, Taylor, I think you're on mute.
Thanks for letting me know that. So next we have Malesia Dunn. Malesia was appointed Executive Director, PPG Foundation and Corporate Global Social Responsibility on July 16, 2018. She leads the strategy and management of PPG's global community engagement activities. She also leads PPG's Colorful Communities program, the company's signature initiative for supporting communities. Previously, she was Director, External Communications for the Colonial Pipeline Company from 2016 to 2018, based in Alpharetta, Georgia. Ms. Dunn currently serves on the board for the August Wilson African American Cultural Center in Pittsburgh, PA.
And finally, we have Tracy McCants Lewis, who is Deputy General Counsel and Director of Human Resources at the Pittsburgh Penguins. McCants Lewis earned her Bachelor of Arts degree at Gannon University in Political Science and her JD from Duquesne University School of Law. She is the immediate past director of the Tribone Center for Legal Education at Duquesne University School of Law and tenured Associate Professor of Law. She is currently an adjunct professor of clinical legal education at Duquesne Law School, where she teaches in the Civil Rights Clinic. Most recently, she was appointed to the Sports and Exhibition Authority's Pittsburgh Sports Commission. The commission will work to bring various sporting events to the city. Ladies, thank you for joining us.
Great to be here. Thanks.
All right, without further ado, let's jump into this conversation. So our first question is, in what ways can our community amplify diversity and inclusion efforts? So Paloma, would you like to start?
Sure. So for me, coming from a large employer in this region, I really think it's making sure that the large employers and small employers, quite frankly, in the region have intentional efforts to attract and hire, retain, promote, diverse talent across the region, especially in the jobs that are well paying, that have opportunity for growth and for upward mobility, quite frankly. I will tell you, as someone who comes from a prior recruiting background, specifically around executive recruiting, one thing I think we could do a better job of is, as we are attracting diverse, talented talent into our region, is making sure when they arrive, when they're being interviewed, that they see Pittsburgh as a place that they can call home, especially as we are recruiting from markets that on the surface might seem more diverse, and quite frankly are more diverse. So how can we make sure that as those families are coming to the Pittsburgh region to interview for roles in our organizations, how can we make sure that they see themselves in our neighborhoods, that they see themselves in our communities, and that they will feel that deep sense of belonging if they accept those jobs? So I think it's partnering with organizations like Vibrant Pittsburgh to make sure that that's brought to life. But I also think it's very personalized, intentional efforts from those big corporate organizations to make sure that they're really making that talent feel welcome and celebrated throughout that recruitment process.
Tracy, would you like to respond to that? I think your microphone was muted too.
Thank you. I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach to the question. I'm going to also look at diversity and inclusion with regard to sports and what we do here with the Penguins. I think it's important that, as Paloma said, that we be intentional with regard to our reach out, but we want to also be intentional with our reach out and representation to bring people and welcome people into the game of hockey. So allowing kids that look like me to see that they can be represented, whether it's in the front office, actually on the ice, or in the stands as a fan. And so making sure that there are those intentional opportunities for individuals to know that they're welcomed. Just as Paloma said, welcome to the city of Pittsburgh, but welcome to the game of sports. But we also need to be intentional when reaching out, making sure that we're listening to see what is it that people need. What is it that they need to feel welcomed? What is it that they need or they feel that they're missing as to why they're not in those spaces? So being intentional with our reach out, but also being intentional with our listening and hearing what the needs are.
Melissa, would you like to comment?
Sure, I will absolutely agree with what Tracy and Paloma has said. And if I even take it a step back, I would say I think we also need to first recognize that there is an issue, right? So we've certainly all heard the data and the reports. You know, Pittsburgh is one of the best places here in the country, but at the same time, one of the worst places for people of color. So I think the first thing we need to do is recognize that we do have an issue. As once you recognize that they're an issue is then I think as Paloma says, be very intentional and be very proactive about putting in steps to address the issue, being proactive in how you address your diversity initiatives and your steps. And again, I agree with all of the additional steps that the ladies have spoken about in terms of recruitment and bringing in talent and supporting that talent really at every step along their journey. When you are recruiting, I think one of the key things to think about is stepping out of your comfort zone. You know, we all like to, all of our friends and everybody looks like us typically in our circles. And in this case, I think, you've got to step outside of that circle and your comfort zone to really reach to diverse talents.
Thank you.
Taylor, if I could just build on something that both of these women just said, I think was a really good point is as we are intentionally reaching out and engaging them, I also think it's important to think about the talent's family, their support network around them. And we at Dix have tried to be very intentional about how we support the family unit around that candidate because the candidate is coming into an environment, hopefully if they accept an offer and they join, they're coming into an environment where they can build friendships and networks. But sometimes their families may not have it as easy. So we need to also be intentional about engaging with that family unit or whatever that the support network might look like, whatever that makeup is. So that the whole family unit, the whole person is being supported and celebrated and can feel like they belong in our region in Pittsburgh. Because if we only focus on the individual that was hired into the role and the family is not happy, that person's probably not going to be a longstanding citizen of Pittsburgh because that family is going to be constantly seeking out a place where they belong.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point.
Yeah, all really great points. Tuning into our next question, the question is, how can employers ensure that they are hiring, promoting diverse talent for senior level and management positions? Melissa, if you want to start.
Yeah, I think I'll start with, some of the comments I just made about, first of all, being thinking about where you're going to find talent and stepping outside of your comfort zone and outside of your circle, and really looking in these other places to find talent, whether it's, places like National Black MBA, Black Engineers, all kinds of great organizations out there with great talent pools to choose from. So I think definitely identifying those sources for talent. And then as we talk about, making sure that you include diverse candidates in your talent pool. So as you are interviewing candidates, you want to make sure you have some diverse candidates in the pool. And again, it's being intentional in doing so. As you then go through that process, you bring them on board, and it's, again, all the things that Paloma's talked about. It's providing support to the employee, and to Paloma's point earlier about their family as well. But making sure that employee is not left out on an island and sort of left to sink or swim on their own. Providing them with mentor support, providing them with ongoing feedback, ongoing support to help them in their career journey. And then as you think about employees that might be in a role today, I think for diverse talent, it's also important to think about 3-5 years down the road and think about what skills are they going to need to be able to move into other positions, senior level management positions, so that they can be ready in, whether it's 2, 3, or 5 years, and being thoughtful about how you help support them in their career journey to get ready. Because it's one thing to get them in the door, it's another thing to keep them, and then it's another thing to make sure they are primed and ready to go when these at senior levels come up.
Yeah, that's definitely a great point. I think it's one that's also overlooked too sometimes. People are trying to step up their diverse recruiting efforts, but then they really need to look at how are they going to nurture that talent.
Exactly.
Tracy, would you like to respond to that or build off of it? Oh, you're on mute, sorry.
And Melissa really covered a lot of what I would say. I think one additional point is with regard to recruitment. One thing we identified at the Pittsburgh Penguins, we were doing a lot of our recruitment on a sports-specific platform. And so in talking with some students, especially at HBCUs, we determined that they go through another platform. So making sure we're reaching out on the platforms that individuals utilize, going to where they are. I think also representation matters a lot. So again, making sure that I'm making myself available as a representative. And so somebody can look and see, that's a Black woman in hockey. My colleague, Zelvina Morrow, also, people look at her, she's a Black woman in hockey. You can see yourself there if you see somebody that looks like you in a position. So I think that's also very important to make sure that we do have individuals that represent what we are looking for and what we are trying to build in our organization, and making sure that they're comfortable representing and assisting us with building more of an inclusive and diverse organization.
Yeah, those are all really great points. Paloma, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think everything that was already said is spot on. I wanted to just offer two more tactical ideas for individuals to try to implement. So we recognize that we need to have intentional efforts around our internal, diverse talent, and how are we promoting and hiring them? How are we developing them? And now, as was previously said, really thinking about that 3 to 5 year plan. What skills are they going to need to get to that next level? But what, in my experience, what I've seen is that sometimes people leaders may think that they're proactively developing talent, but as you really double click and think through what talent is getting the most attention, there's something called Ingroup favoritism that might be existing. So we like to lead through our people leaders through that and let me say that again. We like to lead our people leaders through an in-group favoritism exercise. And I can send it as a follow-up to you guys if it's something you're interested in, or honestly, if you just Google it, you'll find it. It's 4 simple questions where very quietly the leader would respond in 30 seconds, 30 seconds or less, with the 3 or 4 names for each question. And what you will typically find is very often the same names are going to come up time and time again. And also, if you continue to have a dialogue and reflection about those names, there might actually be a lot in common with those people, whether it's gender, race, socioeconomic status, position in the company, function within the company, whatever it might be. And so a really very pragmatic place to start with your people leaders is to do that exercise and then encourage them to think through who are 2 or 3 teammates, employees that they could broaden their network with, to broaden who they're being exposed to, so that they do have mentors and sponsors and champions across the organization that are different than the humans in that in-group. Once again, I think we all think we're doing a great job because we want to be great people leaders and we want to be developing talent, but sometimes you have to hold the mirror up to yourself and really think through, who am I spending the most time with? Who am I giving the most energy to? And is there someone I'm missing? Is there someone that I need to reach out to and build a greater relationship with? Invite them to coffee, invite them for lunch, get to know them a little bit better, invest more of my time in that person so that I can help them be a champion in those conversations. There's an author who said, every performance conversation about you will not be present for. You are not going to be in the room. So you need to create champions across your organizations. So when those performance conversations are happening, someone is able to advocate for you.
Yeah, those are all good points. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, if I can add on to what Paloma just said, having that, not just a mentor, but having that sponsor that's in the room for you when you're not there, that is putting forth your best. They are representing you.
Yeah, definitely great to have a sponsor and advocates in an organization. Great points, everyone.
Okay, for our next question, I think Paloma kind of touched on this a little bit when she mentioned employers supporting the employee's family. But how else can employers make sure their business or company is approachable in a place that diverse talent would feel comfortable working for?
Do you want me to jump in there?
Yeah, that's fine. Mm-hmm.
So I think we have to walk the talk as employers, and I think that if you say you're going to be diverse and that you're a diverse business, then you need to reflect that in everything that you do and that you say, and that we as consumers see. It's easy enough to, these days in 2020, there are all kinds of tools out there, from your company to Glassdoor to everything else, to really get a feel for a company. So I think if a company talks about diversity as, one of their key pillars, it's easy enough for me to Google and see what your leadership team looks like, see what the images on your website look like, right? Are the images diverse? When I look at commentary, when I look at your customers, all of that I'm looking at as a potential employee to see if you're really sort of, walking the talk. So, today, here we are where everybody's talking about diversity, and companies, including ours, are coming out with messaging that we won't tolerate it and that we won't support it. But I think it's ever more important that we make sure that we're reflecting on these messages that we're sharing.
Tracy, would you like to add on to that?
I completely agree. As Melissa said, with some of the events that we've seen nationally, the events that we're still seeing with regard to tragedies in the African American and diverse communities, a lot of organizations, companies, nonprofits have jumped immediately into putting out into the atmosphere that they are diverse, that they support Black Lives Matters, but where is the action behind those statements? You don't want those statements to just come out in a rush and fall on deaf ears, but for there to be a conscious effort that is strategic and put in place and something that will be lasting. So I think that's important to also be conscious of. I think that there needs to be an effort to make sure you're implementing programming, implementing any of your initiatives that will have a lasting and staying power, not something that's going to be fly by night so that you can be looked upon as, okay, they addressed it, but is it something that is really going to last and stay? And I think that's really important. I think people are looking for that.
Yeah, Paloma, would you like to add anything else to that?
I think all the points that were made were brilliant and spot on. You know, I think something Tracy said before about representation matters is sort of what Melissa said as well. It does matter. It matters in an enormous way, because that's where the authenticity comes forward. People will see through you really fast. Even if you do a really great job in the marketing and your employment branding, if they walk into your building and they don't see it, they're gonna see right through you. So I think being really intentional about representation. I also think, you know, leading with vulnerability in this space, as practitioners in this space, we need to listen and have courage in saying what we're doing well and what we're not doing well. And I think sometimes, especially with candidates, it's okay to say, we're not where we want to be, but we're really working hard to get there. And it's by making those statements where I think, or at least in our experience, we've seen candidates say, well, that's okay, because I want to be part of a change. I want to be part of owning the future of what this company could look like, because it's not just one person. You need every person across the region, every person, you need mass, you know, to really make change. And so I think just having some ownership in where you are, where you want to be, will help bring that authenticity to life, and will help make it real and make those commitments genuine.
Oh, thank you. Those are all really great points. I think honesty and transparency are two biggest things for employers to do. Hey, Mega, do you want to take the next question?
Yeah. So the next question is for Tracy specifically. The Pittsburgh Penguins has the Hockey is for Everyone initiative to drive positive social change and foster more inclusive communities. How do you see these efforts growing and evolving, particularly with the future of attending sporting events, where many of these efforts are able to be implemented so undermined?
So I'm going to take you back to January and February. We had our Black Hockey History Day, and we were able to, we had a great event, a great series of events over a weekend. We were able to reach out beyond the city of Pittsburgh. We had international guests come to Pittsburgh, and we sponsored the event with the Black Girl Hockey Club. We wanted to make sure that we were going to create an atmosphere, a safe place for Black fans of hockey to come and enjoy a hockey game. We partnered with the National Hockey League, and we were able to bring in the Black Hockey History Mobile Unit to talk about Blacks in hockey. But we didn't just keep it in our arena, and I think that's going to be important. We're not sure what sports are going to look like in the coming months, if we're actually going to have fans back in the arena and when that's going to happen. So I think what we did in January and February is what we're going to continue to do. We're going to take our initiatives outside of the arena. You don't have to just be here to get it. So when we did the Black Hockey History Day, we took that museum over to the north side, where we had students from Allegheny Middle School as well as Martin Luther King. They were able to come and see that information. We also took that mobile unit to Miller Elementary in the Hill District, where students were able to see Blacks in hockey. They were able to see that representation. We also then did an activation where we took hockey into the school for the kids. Those are the things that we will continue to do with our Hockey is for Everyone. This season was going to be the first year that we were going to have very distinct events for each of the Hockey is for Everyone initiatives. So we had Black Hockey History, our Pride Night, same thing. We want to take it out of the arena, take it into the community, let them know that they are welcomed. And we're approaching all of those initiatives very intentionally, letting people know that they're welcomed and giving them representation. And I see that Delvina did post in the chat. You can look at a video that we have from that Black Hockey History Day. So we hope that initiatives like this and our efforts through the Hockey is for Everyone will give people an opportunity to touch and feel all of those hockey initiatives and be able to know that they can do it in their community, and then they can also come to the arena and experience it as well.
Yeah, that's really great to kind of keep the momentum going with that.
Okay, so the next question is for Melissa. So last year, PPG was named one of the best employers for diversity in 2019 by Forbes. What are some of the policies and efforts you have found to be the most successful and effective?
Sure. Well, I'll talk a little bit about, so first of all, I'm really proud of that recognition from Forbes for our company. I'm proud to be working for a company that is receiving that recognition. So really exciting there. I would say, there are a number of things that we do and have been doing. And more recently, I think, and like so many other of you at companies, we have been really taking on this issue of diversity even more so than we had even in the past, right? So over these past few months, since the incident happened with George Floyd, we've been having a number of conversations, small group conversations in teams, as well as larger conversations with larger groups, as well as, and the whole company, from leaders all the way down throughout the organization. And I think those really open and honest and transparent conversations are really important to help the organization listen and learn and ultimately move forward. So I'm really thankful that we've been able to do that and really open our doors, if you will, around diversity even more so than we have had previously. But we've had and continue to have things like employee networks, successful employee networks. We have a women's leadership group, which is phenomenal and does an amazing job supporting our female talent and women in the organization. We have a young professionals group as well that is super active and engaging. And then we have a multicultural group as well, and we're gonna expand that a bit more. Again, these times that we're in creates opportunities for us. And so we're gonna expand a little bit there, and we're gonna be creating very specifically a Black employee network and some other very specific network affinity groups that I think will be positive changes as we move forward. But I also want to talk about my world in community engagement as I manage our foundation and all of our community engagement work. And I'm thrilled that we're able to play a small part in the diversity arena in that through the work we do in the community, really we're able to focus some of our dollars and our efforts to organizations that are supporting specifically minorities and underserved, primarily children, through education and through STEM education. We've got a number of programs that we support both here locally in Pittsburgh, as well as around the country and around the world, that are very engaging. And again, our goal and my goal is to make sure that we are absolutely doing our part to help engage minorities and these underserved populations in these STEM careers, which are frankly the careers of the future relative to our business and any number of other businesses. One example, we have a young lady that's based out in California, and she's a teenager, and she started a STEM program basically out of her bedroom, if you will, and has been able to really grow and develop that program through just sheer hard work on her part, and I'll give credit as well to her mother. And we've been working with her for about 3 years now, and we've recently expanded our partnership with her. And she's a young African-American girl who is just doing amazing work in STEM education. So it's programs like that, and I think things like that that really help to set us apart and help to give us that distinction and give us that diversity award from Forbes magazine. So just a few examples there.
Thank you.
Now we have a question for Paloma. Dick's Sporting Goods pledged to the Act on Diversity and Inclusion campaign. Can you tell us a little bit more about Dick's Sporting Goods Diversity and Inclusion Council?
Sure. So a little history on where we are from a Dick's Sporting Goods perspective on our journey. So last summer, actually, we just sort of lapped ourselves. We made a commitment where Ed Stack, our CEO, signed that pledge through CEO Action for Diversity and Inclusion. And when we made that pledge, we had 3 very clear actions that we wanted to activate on. The first is me, putting me in the role. The second was creating our council. And the third was actually committing to 100% completion around unconscious bias training across 100% of our teammates. So once I was put into the role, we had to build the training and identify partners to do that. But we also had to build this council. So we've actually renamed the council to be Inclusion and Diversity, and that is how we refer to the work at Dick's Sporting Goods. And the purpose for that was really around an evaluation of where we needed to do a lot of work. We do know that representation matters, and we have an enormous opportunity ahead of us, especially in our corporate office around representation. But what we really thought through was we can be doing some brilliant things around diversity recruitment and really trying to attract that talent into our organization. But if we don't have the culture and an environment where that diversity is going to be welcomed and celebrated and honored, that we're never going to move the needle forward. So really that's why we refer to the work as inclusion and diversity, because we needed to create an environment where passionate and skilled teammates thrive, no matter the way that you identify that you are welcome at Dick's Sporting Goods. So the council that we formed, going back to your original question, was 14 teammates from across the organization at all levels. So we have everything from senior vice presidents down to an associate buyer, which is our most junior buyer position in the organization. And those 14 teammates are the hearts and the minds that help to inform the work that I do. This past year, because we just got started last year, this past summer when COVID really happened, and then when George Floyd was murdered, that council was the first phone call. Those were the first humans that I went to really talk and have those hard conversations on what do we need to be doing. And really what they advised me and advised our CEO and our president to do next was to reach out to our teammates and to give our teammates a voice and to ask in a very vulnerable way to our teammates, what did they want to see us doing? And so that's exactly what we've been doing over the past few months, is engaging with our teammates in a very meaningful way, asking for their feedback, asking for their stories, asking for them to share with us what they feel we need to be doing next. And we've compiled all of that feedback, compiled all of those brilliant ideas, and have actually formed 19, what we're referring to as inclusion impact teams across the organization. They stretch for every corner of the business, and they are all moving forward in their own lane to influence inclusion and diversity in their own way. So we have teams that represent diversity supplier programs, inclusion through product. Since we are a retailer and we are a product-focused company, how can we make sure that we're meeting every athlete's needs through the product that we sell, and that people feel that sense of belonging when they come into our stores? How do we think about hiring and developing? How do we think about our employment brand and employment marketing? So as I said before, 19 teams, quite a bit of work. But it was really all informed by our teammates, and it was informed by that council. So I don't know where I would be without them today.
Yeah, that's definitely great to hear. So I'm gonna put it over to Taylor.
So for our next question, this is kind of a personal question. Why is diversity and inclusion in the workplace important to each of you? And what value does it bring to a workplace and its culture? So Tracy, would you like to start that off?
Sure. Well, as an African-American woman from the city of Pittsburgh, I'm a Pittsburgh native, diversity and inclusion is important to me. I have been, throughout my education and a lot of my employment opportunities, oftentimes I am the only African-American in the room, sometimes the only female in the room. And so wanting to make sure at our organization that everyone feels welcomed, that you have a comfort level working in your environment, being able to attract more individuals that look like me or other diverse individuals, that they have a safe space in which to work. And then to Paloma's point and Melissa's point also earlier, making sure that if we are recruiting somebody to the city of Pittsburgh to work, somebody to work with the Pittsburgh Penguins, that they have a comfort level and then they will want to stay here. So making sure that they have the safe environment in their workplace, that they have a good life outside of the organization to work, to live, to play. And so wanting to make sure that we create an environment that will attract more individuals, more diverse individuals, that will have the opportunity to grow and thrive within the organization. And so I don't necessarily hold myself out as a role model, but I'd like for individuals to look at me and see that I represent something that they can achieve. You know, working in hockey, which is a predominantly white male sport, there may be individuals that don't fall into what they may believe you have to be to work in this industry. And if they see me, they believe that they can achieve it. They believe that it's something that they can do. They believe that there is an opportunity for them here. And so that's why diversity and inclusion is important to me.
Yeah, Paloma, would you like to comment?
Sure. So the work is really important to me because I feel for many of our teammates, for many of our colleagues and friends and neighbors who might represent some of those diverse communities, they have an extraordinary burden to bear. I mean, Tracy just mentioned it. She might be the only Black woman in a meeting. And I think allowing for all of us to connect with what that experience might be, to acknowledge that it is different than an experience that we personally have had, helps us become better humans, quite frankly, softer, more gentle people. And I think about, from a performance perspective, from a bottom line business perspective, quite frankly, if you want to get the most out of your teammates, out of your employees and your people, the best thing you can do for them is to engage them and to remove that burden, or alleviate, help to carry that burden for them, so they don't, they're not putting their brain power and their energy into that. I will tell you a quick story that when I was first put into my role, I had a teammate reach out to me and share a story with me about coming out. The individual was part of the LGBTQ community, and the story that this individual shared really emphasized that burden that he was navigating our environment with, that he felt he couldn't really be his full self and was needing to filter, stories about his weekend or stories about shopping for a house. And And I think about the brain power and the energy that that high performing talent had to give to filter that part of his life, instead of removing that burden for that individual, where they can continue to thrive and perform at an even higher level, because that energy is really being put towards their work and their performance. So for me, it's really, I think, an unlock from a business perspective, and really getting the most out of your teammates, and really opening your eyes to things that you might not be aware of. And it's not your fault that you're not aware of, because we can't know everything, right? But if we can have that humble, embrace humble listening and cultural humility to sit back and allow somebody's voice to be amplified, I think our businesses and us as individuals are better for it.
It's great. Thank you for sharing that. Just wanted to check in with everyone. We have less than 20 minutes left, and we can certainly go over, but we're going to do one more question from our pre-ask questions, and then we'll go to the chat. So the last question here is, how can employees who are facing discrimination, systemic racism, or other forms of marginalization stand up for themselves? How do they help to create change that not only impacts their day-to-day career, but also helps everyone facing similar issues? And if Melissa would like to start that.
Sure. So I think, I'll go back to what I said earlier about the recognition, obviously, that there is a issue and a concern that needs to be addressed. I think there is the developing policies and putting measures in place to really track and address the concerns are really key. I think that as leaders in organizations, whether it's large or small organizations, it's important that, leaders hold themselves and their leadership teams accountable for the actions and the work that they're doing. They're really setting the tone. They're deciding the culture of that organization. And, these are really important things, right? Your sales, your bottom line are important, but the diversity of your organization is just as important. For me, it's who I am. It's what I bring to the table. And if you want me in your organization, then I would think that that would be critically important to the success of the organization. So I think making sure you have measures and tools in place to address diversity along the way will be really key.
Yeah, that's definitely important. Tracy or Paloma, do you have anything to add to that?
Just building off of what Melissa said, I think you also have to make sure that your organization has a culture in which an individual who believes that they're being discriminated against feels comfortable coming to someone. That's the only way that those matters can be addressed, is if you know about them. So there has to be that safe space, or I'll just say a safe space that person knows, and the policies are in place where the individual knows exactly what they need to do, how they need to report it. Because if it's not reported and it goes unchecked, it will fester. So you have to have a safe space, an opportunity, and policies and procedures put in place so they know exactly who to come to and they feel safe coming to that person, knowing that they will not suffer any type of retaliation or retribution for reporting such.
Yeah, I think Tracy's point is a great one. And I think we can answer one of the questions that was in the chat around how can small organizations get started in this space. And I think what Tracy just said is exactly it. Work to create that psychological safety, whether it's through policy and procedure, whether it's through communication, whether it's both. Probably the answer is both. Training is a huge component, right? Understanding foundational inclusion training around bias, around empathy. Part of what Tracy said is not only allowing for that individual to come forward, but also some training from a leadership perspective on empathy and being able to see that experience as that person experienced it, not how you choose to see it. I think I butchered that Brene Brown quote, but anybody who's a Brene Brown fan knows probably what I'm trying to say. So I think those are some of the foundational ways that any organization, no matter the size, could begin to build this part of their culture. And I think psychological safety is really the best place to start.
Yeah, definitely a good point, because, you know, people aren't really going to come forward unless there's trust there and they feel like they have a safe space. So let's go over now to the chat and we'll select a few questions for you guys to answer. So Steve says, what are some common missteps recruiters and hiring managers make in building job descriptions and job requirements that inadvertently exclude minority candidates from even applying? How do we make those job postings more inclusive so we get more diverse candidates interested?
I could jump in here if that's okay. I think in this case, what I would ask is thinking about your talent pool, and the more requirements you put in a job description, the smaller your talent pool is naturally going to be, which therefore may limit the diversity that you get from the applicant pool. So something that we really try to champion conversations around are those requirements. What is truly required to do the job, and what are the nice to haves? And even as you are communicating the nice to haves, being really thoughtful about how you're communicating them and what you are communicating, I think is something we really have to take sometimes it's better to go slow to go fast in that case. And many of us may be using and reusing very old job descriptions because it just worked and it's in our systems, and so we just repost it. But take those extra 10 minutes to review it with your hiring manager, to evaluate, or if you are the hiring manager, and just ask yourself, what is truly required to do this job, and what the rest of it is white noise that the recruiter can maybe screen for or dig into through that interview process. But we know that, especially with women, but also minority candidates, that many of them will look to achieve 100% of the qualifications on that job description when they apply, whereas some majority candidates will actually only look to check the box on 60 to 70% of those requirements. So the more requirements you can get rid of, theoretically, the larger talent pool you'll have to work with, and therefore the more diverse population you'll have to select.
It's a great point.
To go back to something I said earlier is and I think that's a great point, Paloma, but I would also encourage, hiring managers to be thinking about where you're posting. Again, like typically dust off the old job spec, and we use that same spec for the next job. But I think it's important to think about where you're posting those jobs beyond sort of the typical places that you normally post it, to really reach out into the talent pool and find and identify these candidates.
Yeah, and that's an excellent point that Gina in the chat made. She said the diverse talent is there. So if an organization really wants to implement it, they can engage with a search firm that specializes in searches for talent or people of color.
Absolutely.
Tracy, did you want to add anything to that? Oh, you're on mute.
No, I don't think there's anything else that I would add.
Okay, great. So taking it over to Taylor for the next question.
Okay, we have a question from Delvina. We are in the midst of one of our most divisive times in modern history. How do we build a platform for DEI while allowing for people to be authentically engaged and not participate in performative activism within the workplace simply because it is a focus or initiative within the organization? So Melissa, do you want to start off with that one?
Yeah, so I think it goes back to, who you really are and your values as an organization. So if you truly believe in diversity and what it represents and what it brings to the table, then I think putting that forward is what you do, and you do it as honestly, holistically as you possibly can. And you're right, we are in a very, strange time here, right, with all that's going on in the world, and that people are standing up and saying, look, enough is enough. So I think we take full advantage of that. And I think, as organizations, we make sure that, one, we take a look in the mirror at ourselves and make sure we're doing the right things. And I'm really happy. I think we're doing just that in our own organization. But then I think we do what we can to support the greater community as well, because even beyond our organizations, we've got to look in our homes, we've got to look in our families, and we really got to make sure that we are, not only diverse at work, but we're diverse everywhere, right? Diversity is not an option necessarily, right? You can only say you're going to be in one particular setting. Diversity is something that, you sort of live and breathe. And so really taking the steps to make sure that you're really living and breathing it throughout everything that you do and who you are as a person.
I'd like to add, I think in organizations, it is a time to take advantage and make sure you can get programming in to increase diversity and inclusion within your organization and also with your customer base or, out in the community. But I think that it's important for people that do have leadership opportunity within the D&I space. If it doesn't feel right, if it feels transactional within your organization, to speak up and address that and say, this just doesn't feel right. And I think Melissa said that, to make sure that it is authentic. And that comes from a conversation. It has to be a courageous conversation that one may have to say, we need to go back to the drawing board, or we really need to look at why we are doing this. What is the intention behind us doing this? Is it because we truly care and we truly want this to be within the fiber of our organization? Or are we doing this just so that we can check it off the list?
And I'll just quickly note that, in organizations, employees can tell the difference. And again, in today's world, not only are they going to tell the difference, they're going to speak up on it, right? Most of you are communicators and the channels and the tools that are out there. And if someone feels that, you're not being transparent, you're not being authentic in what you're saying as an organization, they're very likely to go on social media these days and let people know that. So it's really, that authenticity is extremely important these days.
Yeah, I think social media almost adds that extra layer of accountability, because you really have to walk the walk, or people are going to call you out on it, as they should.
Exactly.
So I think we have time for one more question, and this comes from Jesse. How do you approach the accessibility part of D&I for differently abled or disabled people?
I can start.
Okay.
With that, I think it goes back to the definition that your organization adopts around diversity, and encouraging organizations to adopt a broad definition that diversity is more than just what you see. Because when we think of differently abled individuals, some of what might make them, some of their differences might be seen or unseen. And so if you are able to adopt a definition of diversity that celebrates both seen differences like skin color, like race, ethnicity, and gender, but also unseen differences like ability, especially if I think about like neurodiversity and things like that, you'll naturally begin to create a space where you can have those conversations. And if you start with that definition, then you can build out programming to build education and understanding of those individuals' experiences and their needs, and how you might be able to support them better, recruit for them more efficiently, create a space for them in your organization where they can really thrive and be celebrated. But for me, I think it starts back with that definition and making sure that they're included there.
Yeah, great point. Does Tracy or Melissa, do you want to add anything to that?
Oh, I know, I think Paloma covered it.
Okay, well, then this is the end of the event. On behalf of does anyone have any closing remarks? Any of our panelists, I mean?
I would just say, first of all, thank you again for the opportunity to chat. I see some of my former communications colleagues and obviously my current team members. So thanks everyone for joining and listening in. You know, as I said earlier, look, diversity is not optional. It's certainly not optional for me. I can, you know, change my hair, I can change my wardrobe, but I really can't change the color of my skin. So for me, this is who I am. And you know, I love the idea that we are having these conversations and being more open about them. And I really hope this leads to a better, more inclusive environment, particularly here in Pittsburgh. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks to everyone who's spoken on this panel today. On behalf of PRSA Pittsburgh, we'd like to thank all of you and our attendees for their time here. We hope this conversation was enlightening and inspiring as we go forward. And we're here for each of you, and we're all in this together. Not to get too High School Musical on you, but we're all in this together. So have a great rest of your day, everyone. Look on our social channels at PRSA PTH because we'll be posting a recap log of this event and the recorded version as well. So thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.